Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. A lot of new faces and a lot of faces that we've been, seeing the last few years. So it's great to catch up with people that we only get to see periodically. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of days. For me, it's always a great learning experience, both from the sessions as well as to hear industry best practices and trends, throughout the breaks and throughout the time we have throughout the day to talk to each other. I'm going to talk today about a lot about the notion or the concept of value and the concept of selling value and the dynamics of value. And I'm going to also tie it into the theme for the day where we're talking about monetization within what's called the now economy. Before I get started, though, we're going to try the first poll. So those that have downloaded the app that Ariella mentioned, this is a bit of a test. And if you could take out your phones, and we just want to get to know who we have here in the audience. So the question you'll see is, what is your company's core business? If you open the Connects Me app, here we go, ready? So it's how many people are equipment manufacturers, meaning they're selling devices, software vendors selling only software, either online, on-premise, or a combination, or those that have a combination of devices as well as software. So we'll give it a minute to tally all the results. It's working. Phew. Okay. All right, interesting results here. So we see it's about 30% that are doing software only, and then the rest, the 70% or so, are split between those that are selling devices only or those that have devices as well as software. So thank you, everyone, for participating. It's a good sign. Hopefully the rest of the polls throughout the day will work as well. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to talk a lot about value. And I want to start off with my own kind of personal lesson in value. So back in, 6th or 7th grade, me and my friends, we all started collecting baseball cards. Anyone else here collect baseball cards as kids? So used to collect baseball cards. It started off as a hobby, quickly spread throughout the school, became a bit of an obsession, and then it ended up becoming more like a business. So it was quite an interesting time then. And it started off, really just collecting the cards, looking at the statistics, had those, those special cases for the cards, the sheets of paper within all these, in the different notebooks and however else we would store them. And we started then, myself, my friends started figuring out which cards have more value, which are less value. Started dragging my parents to baseball card shows on the weekends to try and get the best deals. Everyone remember the Beckett's pricing guide used to go into the newest version of Beckett's, go out and really check the prices, and just became completely obsessed with it. And to the point where we realized, we can make some money off of this thing, right? So started finding the best place to buy the cards, come into school, sell it to other kids. Some kids were able to get single cards, other kids had access to being able to buy full box sets, and it just kind of spread very quickly. And at a certain point, I guess looking back on today, I would call, we kind of tried an innovative business model. So we took a stack of 20 or 30 random cards. Some of them were more valuable than others. Some of them were complete junk. Put them into a pile. Had basically blindfolded the kid who was going to then select one of the cards, charged 50 cents a pick, and then they could pick one card out of the stack of 30. And that went on for a couple of weeks like that. And, it was a good, nice, fun, enjoyable thing and make a little bit money on it. But then we realized that if we add more valuable cards into the stack, we can charge more for them to pick. And it quickly turned to that we had different dynamic pricing depending on the value of the cards that we were offering in the stack. So the kid would continue to pay 50 cents if there was maybe one card that was worth $5 to $10 and the rest of the cards were junk. But they would spend up to $1, $5, and sometimes $10 for a single pick, depending on the value of the cards in there. That went on really well for a few months. At a certain point, the principal got wind of what was happening, shut down the whole operation, and there went the baseball card business. But looking back on it, it was basically, if the fundamental lesson is what is selling value, right? We were charging not based on a single unit. We're charging dynamic pricing based on the value, or at least what we perceive the value, or the value according to Beckett's or whoever it is we're getting the value from, for the cards that were in the different stacks. So fast forward to today. When we talk in Gemalto, both internally as well as many customers, when we talk about software monetization, this whole concept of value comes up, very frequently in discussions. And one way that we look at it is there are really two kind of building blocks to this monetization from a strategic perspective. Right? One is the value that you create, right, in your offerings. What is your core value proposition to your customers that you have today? How does that value evolve over time, and how does it change? And the second aspect is how do you actually capture that value, right? How do you monetize the value that you're providing to your customers? And these are, like I said, it's two core building blocks that are fundamentally important to how you're going to monetize today and over time. But the thing is, over time also, that value is dynamic, right? Things change. My baseball card collection, if I had it today, it would be a very different value than it was back when I was in 6th grade. There are some cards that are worthless that back then might have been worth a lot more, and some cards are probably worth a lot more than they were, or worth a lot more today than they were back then. And the concept of value is dynamic. It changes. It changes based on customer demand. It changes based on market trends. It changes based on many different factors that are impacting it. And one of those factors or one of those market dynamics that we want to talk to you about the next couple of days, and is a core theme for this event for the next 2 days, it's what's called the now economy. This is Professor Robert Walcott, professor from Kellogg, who many people attribute to coining the phrase the now economy a couple of years ago. And when he talks about the now economy, what he's really focused is on the concept of bringing the products or services closer to what he calls the point of demand, closer to where it's being consumed, closer to the customer. So it's not just always about now economy, meaning I want it and need to get it now, but it's really shifting the entire supply chain, the entire value chain, and it's shifting who captures that value. And some of those examples that we think about typically when we talk about the now economy are a lot of those common, very successful services and solutions that we know from the online world, like Airbnb, like Uber, Netflix, Amazon, who's got all sorts of different now economy related services. One example here is Amazon Home Services. Or even Solar City is one that he frequently references as a now economy success story, because they bring the generation of electricity closer to the point of demand. They bring it basically to the consumer's home versus the old model of dealing with it. But here's the thing. There are certain attributes that are common across these success stories within the now economy. Some of them are doing, or have, you can find all of these attributes or areas that they've turned into an area of expertise. Others at least have most of them in place. First and foremost, it's about the superior customer experience. Right? All those companies that I just mentioned, and those that I think come to mind naturally, have changed the customer experience to the point where it's completely different than what it was previously. When I think about Uber, right, I use them quite frequently when I travel. And if I go onto the app and I order an Uber, and if somehow it pops up that it's going to be any more than 3 to 5 minutes, there's like an emotional reaction that I have of annoyance for some reason about Uber, that it's not coming immediately. In the old way of doing it, if I would have picked up the phone and called the taxi company and they said, we'll be there in 10 minutes, I would have said, okay, great. But why is it that Uber has set this expectation of, it's this immediate, I expect in my immediate vicinity, I'm going to get an Uber. And the same goes for the rest of these services. They also have flexible consumption and pricing models. Again, Uber is a great example of that, and so are the others. Right? It's being able to change those dynamically, change those according to market need, market demand, to be able to test new things. What's also fundamental to their business and be able to scale at the level that they've done, at the speed that they've done, is the automation of processes and the way that they operate their business. Right? Without it, they cannot scale. It wouldn't work. And the fourth item here is value chain disruptive. Right? If you think about an Airbnb, right, what has that done to the travel industry, to the hotel industry? It completely changes the value chain. From an adaptable platform perspective, you could think about it from maybe a more simplistic model. If you think about Netflix, who started off with shipping DVDs, to what it is today in terms of the streaming service and the type of experience we get as consumers of Netflix. And they're all data-driven. Right? Without data, these companies wouldn't survive. And I've heard different things over the last few months about data is the new oil. Data is the new currency. Basically, data is what's becoming critical to companies in order to succeed in this now economy type of environment. It also requires this near instant provisioning. Right? I mentioned the Uber, right? Give me the service as quickly as soon as I order it. That's my expectation. Instant, real time, or near instant, as close as you can, depending on the service or solution you're providing. And finally, they live in a connected ecosystem, It's not just them on their own. They have partners, they have other companies that they work with, and they have to be connected to that entire ecosystem. And so it's critically important for companies that are dealing with these now economy type of activities, again, bringing the solutions and the provisioning of those services and products closer to the customer, that they develop the capabilities across these different areas. And what I want to stress here, though, and this is, again, tying into the theme for the event for the next couple of days, is that the now economy is not just about consumer services, right? Typically, when you talk about now economy, these are the examples that come to mind. It's the Ubers, it's the Airbnb, et cetera. But it's not just for the consumer world. If you think back to the attributes that I just showed on the previous slide, those are things that are reshaping industries across the board, right? Whether it's in enterprise, business to business, consumer, it really doesn't matter. It's reshaping industries, it's transforming the way business is being done, and that is what I think is a key area that we want to focus on the next couple of days around this whole new economy for business and how does that get monetized. So I'm going to give just 3 examples of different industries that are having a new economy type of an impact, or where things are changing within these dynamics. Again, but these are just 3 examples. There are many different examples we can bring up across different industries. I'm sure you've heard some of them. So I'm just going to, like I said, touch on 3. First is we're kind of calling the 4th manufacturing revolution. There's a recent TED Talk from earlier in the year by Olivier Scalabret. I highly recommend that you take a look at it. It was like a 12 or 15-minute TED Talk, where he talks about the evolution or the revolution of manufacturing. Basically, what his premise is that every 50 to 60 years or so, there's a major fundamental change to the way manufacturing is being done, or an impact on how goods are being manufactured, that is driving the key drivers to economic growth. And he mapped it back to the Industrial Revolution, which started around 1780 till the mid-1800s with the steam engine, to the early 1900s with mass production, right, Henry Ford, and then to the 60s and 70s, what he called the first wave of automation, and then finally to where we are today, which he explains or talks about how we're on the brink of this next 4th phase of manufacturing revolution. And he goes in and he speaks about the changes of robotic technology for manufacturing and how that's going to help automate factories. According to him, today only 8% of factories have automation built in. And that's expected to get up to 25% over the coming few years. He talks about additive manufacturing, 3D printing, and the capabilities to be able to simplify processes and development of goods. One example is in the aerospace industry, where the fuel nozzles today or previously would take 20 different parts to manufacture and then to build those fuel nozzles, which was a significant overhead in terms of how those would need to be manufactured within the aerospace industry, and can you imagine also the quality checks that needed to be done on those. And today the aerospace industry is moving all that production of those fuel nozzles into 3D printing, where it's basically they send the design over to the 3D printer and it prints one complete fuel nozzle. And that's changing the way manufacturing is happening. And the third point, and probably most important that he brings up, is just using others as examples around this technology evolution that's impacting manufacturing, is what he's calling basically the scale, customization at scale, where it's going to get to the point where you can order or provide goods that are customized, but at the same price and at the same timeline as if it would have been done in mass production, right? So it's bringing that factory basically closer to the consumer, using the new technologies of automation, additive manufacturing, and others in order to be able to basically manufacture on demand and in a customized way in order to change the way things are being done. I read recently that UPS is now doing tests in 100 of their locations in the US, where they're setting up these kind of mini factories with 3D printing and other automation technologies, basically in order to kind of do just that and test just that. Right? Can you imagine you can order something from UPS based on your design and get it delivered the same day or within a couple of hours. So that's one key wave that we're seeing, that if you think about it, again, it's bringing that production of goods closest to the customer. Thinking back to that definition or the key fundamentals of the now economy is bringing the goods and services closer to the point of demand. A second example is connected healthcare. I mentioned earlier the IoT. There's a lot of talk about connected healthcare within the IoT, And the estimates are that within the next few years, there's going to be over $400 billion spent by healthcare providers on IoT technologies. And there's some key drivers that are happening in the market, right? On the one hand, you have rising costs of healthcare. And the other, which is also causing some of those rising costs, are regulations and quality of care. And so that's a very disruptive environment then. In order to be able to continue giving high-quality care in a cost-effective way, there has to be a technological shift. Forbes, I saw recently, there was an article about this connected healthcare, and they called it the Uberification of healthcare. And what it does is it's not just in order to help the hospitals and the healthcare professionals and providers to reduce costs. It also enables them to give better care. It's not just that we could be connected wherever we are, at home, at work, in the gym, or whatever it might be. But the end result is also that there's going to be better healthcare being able to be provided to people who didn't always even have access to it in countries where they couldn't necessarily get access to that type of healthcare. Again, bringing the solution, the services closer to the consumer, utilizing these technologies. And finally, the third example, calling smart farming is one way to talk about it, agriculture and the advancements in agriculture. There was a recent article in The Economist focused on just the technology advancements that are happening within the agriculture world. And actually, they brought an example of almonds. It was interesting, I didn't know this, that 80% of the almonds in the world are produced in California. And it brings in $11 billion a year to California farmers. The other interesting fact there was that in order to produce one almond, it takes about a gallon of water. Right? And given the waste of water as well as the issues with lack of enough water in California, that's a serious problem and a serious cost to the farmers. And so it profiles one farmer who installed within their sensors across their almond fields here in California, basically to measure the moisture that's happening in the fields, collects all the data, sends it up to the cloud, crunches and analyzes the data, and then sends it down to the irrigation systems. And then in real time, it adjusts the irrigation, and resulting in a 20% savings for this specific farmer in their water costs in producing the almonds. And that, again, that's in that real-time data, it's automation of processes, it's utilizing a lot of those attributes that I spoke about before that are new economy relevant. And again, I bring these three examples just for sake of example in order to stress the fact that it's not just about the consumer world. All of us that are selling to businesses or within different industries need to rethink how our businesses are going to be transformed by these new economy, these now economy directions and technological advancements that are helping companies like the ones that I just mentioned, helping the consumer companies as well as the business-to-business companies really evolve and change the way they go about and do their business. What's interesting, though, when thinking about this, when we look at the core technology that is behind these advancements, that's the enablers, we find that software is really everywhere. And software is being deployed across all these different industries and across whether it's through in devices, in the cloud, on-premise, helping to collect the data. It's really software that is central here, right? Software is everywhere. And software is the enabler that's helping to reshape all these different industries. And with software everywhere, and this is where it brings us into this conference this week, we need to think how we monetize the software when we are going through this dynamic market change. So some of the aspects that you're going to be hearing a lot about over the next 2 days are customer experience. Right? If I'm a customer, and in my consumer life, I'm used to getting things automated, provisioned immediately. I have the same expectations when it comes to the software I use in my business. When I'm buying a device, I want that software to be updated. The license need to be updated in terms of the provisioning. If I decide to add something, I want that to be to my software. I want that to be available to me immediately, and so on and so forth. Second, the business model flexibility. Right? What we know today is not going to be the same tomorrow. These changes are happening all around us. Business models are changing, and I had already last night at the cocktail hour here that we had yesterday evening, I heard from multiple people that I was talking to that are the attendees here about how their business is changing, the business models that they now need to adapt to, but they also don't know what the business models are going to be in the next 2 or 3 years. And so you have to make sure you have the strategy and the infrastructure in place in order to be able to adapt. The third is operational automation. Again, thinking about how to do this stuff at scale. Right? Your operations and how you manage everything from the time you take the order till you deliver your products and services, and how you continuously manage that recurring and ongoing relationship with your customer needs to be as automated as possible in order for you to be able to do this at scale. The fourth item is around the data. Right? So data could be used for for intelligence to help you understand how your customers are using the products and services, how you can continuously improve your offerings, how you can charge differently for your offerings, and so on and so forth. There's so much you can do with the data, but it's critically important to be able to collect that data, to aggregate that data, and then to put it to good use. And finally, security and protection. Right? This is all nice, but if it is not secure, then you're going to lose trust with your customers. You can potentially be impacted by dynamics in the market or issues in the market that you have where your brand is not going to be able to be sustained if it's not secure and you don't have that trust relationship. And so these are 5 key aspects that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days that are relevant to this now economy trend and how software monetization ties into that. And so that, again, like I said, ties into the entire event, what we're going to be doing over the next 2 days. And hopefully you're going to learn from the different speakers as well as from the different peers and people that you're going to be able to meet throughout the days. Finally, just to close off, I want to leave with one quote from Jeff Bezos. He said, "You should wake up every morning drenched in sweat, but not because you're afraid of your competitors. Right? Be afraid of your customers, because they're the ones who have the money." And I think this is the central theme also when it comes to now economy and thinking through everything around the customer experience. It's the customers who are driving this. Right? It's the users that are expecting things to be different than they have been previously, whatever industry you serve. And it has to start from the customer and then go from there internally and see how you have to adapt your own business processes, your own monetization models, and the way you generally do business. So thank you very much, and I hope you get a lot out of the next 2 days.